On the 14th of November 1940, during the Second World War, the English city of Coventry was devastated by a series of bomb raids from the German Air Force, killing hundreds of people and destroying much of the town as it was known. Coventry's iconic cathedral was brought to rubble, and its ruins still stand today as a symbolic reminder of that night and Coventry's rise from the flames. Coventry became a global symbol of peace and reconciliation after famously forgiving the Germans and establishing peace following the tragedy of that night. This week marks the 75th anniversary of that night, and Coventry will be remembering that night and the events that would change this city forever. Mary Locke was living in Coventry with her family during the Blitz, and her family home was destroyed that night when she was just 17. Many of Mary's friends and neighbours died that night, and tragically, her mother passed away 2 years later, believed to be because of the trauma and anxiety that the family went through as a result of that night. With an incredible desire to help others, Mary went on to join the Civil Defence Fire Guard, where she became the only female instructor, and she has dedicated much of her life to helping others since. Today, Mary is a member of the Civil Defence Association and is believed to be the only surviving member from Coventry. Now aged 92, Mary continues her voluntary services, and her strength and commitment has been recognised on a number of occasions, most recently when she met Prince Edward, who expressed a deep interest in her story. This is Mary's story. So, hi Mary, thank you for having me in your home today. If you could just firstly tell me about what your life was like before the Blitz happened.
Well, firstly, I was 16 years old in 1939, and I lived at number 21 Three Spires Avenue, Coventry, with my father and mother and my two sisters. It was a semi-detached house which was built in 1928. I spent a lot of my time with the local church, and I was in the choir, I was in the Sunday school. In fact, I was a Sunday school teacher, and we had a young people's fellowship which I belonged to as well, so a lot of that kept me very busy over those years. And when 1940 came and I was 17, I left school by then, and so I was lucky to have a job in a bank, and I used to go to the bank at Bedworth, and I used to have to go into Broadgate to get the tram. And the tram took me from Broadgate along Foyles Hill Road to Bedworth. But this was at the time when we were getting bombs dropped on Coventry, and unfortunately Foyles Hill Road did have bombs and the track was destroyed. So then I thought I was really quite grown up, because I used to go to work on the train and I caught the train at Camden Road Station to go to Bedworth, which was really quite good.
I went to school right next to there every day.
You did? Yes. And I got some books to show you for that, because my father went to public school as well, you see, and my grandfather went to public school. He was at the bottom of Hill Street.
Wow.
So, yes, I'm a Coventrian. I was born at the top of Bishop Street in 1923.
So that was your childhood then, but what was life like in Coventry? What was life like for the people of Coventry?
Well, it was a lovely old city. We used to go in there quite often, because we did a lot of our shopping in the centre of the town. There was always a fish market, and there was the open market for buying vegetables and that sort of thing. And in Smithford Street, there was one of the places was where we could always go and buy our cheese at Gelsworthy's, and we went there every Saturday. And as soon as you went in, you were offered a piece of cheese to taste. Yeah, so that was in Smithford Street. Broadgate doesn't look a bit like it used to be. No. When it was just old, there was the council house is still in the same place, and the little road at the side called Hay Lane with a shop in it where you could always go and buy things if you would happen to be in the line of liking to do tailoring or sewing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I mean, I've heard it was very medieval, very beautiful
yes, it
town.
Was. There was St Mary's Hall. Yes, that was just roundabout by the cathedral.
So very different to how it is now then.
Oh, it's totally different. The whole of the centre was just rubble, the way with the bombs coming down, because we didn't expect it, you see.
Can you tell me about that day then, the 14th of November 1940? What was that day like? I mean, were you said, were you expecting it?
No, we weren't expecting anything really to happen, although of course we knew that we'd seen tanks and armoured vehicles about. And we had bombs in Coventry in various places, but we didn't really think we were going to get such a night as a Blitz. We weren't really prepared for it. We hoped it didn't happen. We were told, well, it wouldn't probably happen because there was supposed to be 6 lines of defence before they got to Coventry. And the day was just an ordinary day. I mean, I went to the bank. It was a cold day. The night was bright with the moon, and that's like that. We came home, had our tea, and as usual, we were prepared. You see, we had to be prepared because Father was quite concerned that the house was going to be safe for us. So he'd had wooden shutters put to the windows of the front room. He had also a shelter put in the back garden, but unfortunately we couldn't use it that night because we'd had rain and it had got water in it. So what we used to do, we used to push all of the furniture in the front room up against the wall between the 2 rooms, and when the sirens went, we would be prepared to get behind this furniture in case we were unlucky enough to be targeted, but we had no idea that it was going to happen. Although previously there had been a landmine dropped near to us in a place called Crampers Fields, and it had come down whilst there were some Polish airmen in the Rialto cinema. They saw this parachute coming down. Well, of course, the bomb, the size of the bomb would be about 6 foot, coming down in a darkened night. It looked as if it was going to be a soldier, and they ran out. And of course, it went off and killed them all. So we had heard that there had been a landmine. But of course, you never expect it's going to happen to you, do you? So when the sirens went about 6 o'clock, we were prepared to get behind these chairs, which we did. And at one point, my father, he thought he'd better go and have a recce and see what was going on. So he goes out into the street and comes back and says, well, there's a dark thing lying in the road between our road, Three Spires Avenue, and Christchurch Road, and something like a sheet draped over the tree and the house further down the road. But we didn't know what it was. We didn't think. I suppose we didn't think about it being a bomb. It was never suggested it was a bomb. So anyway, he got back into the house and behind the furniture, and about, I suppose it wasn't more than 10 minutes or quarter of an hour later, to our horror, all this stuff was all being poured down all over us, which was plaster. Not so much bricks, but plaster and rubbish all coming down over us, because the landmine, as it was, had exploded. The story going that several men around in the vicinity had gone along to see what it was, but it hadn't. But we're never sure whether they touched it, or whether it's delayed, or the vibration set it off. But it went off.
So what time of night was this?
That would be about 9:30.
So quite early then?
Oh yes, quite early, yes. Very early, really.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the sky was lit up with all these sentry bombs coming down. It was bright moonlight night. The sentry bombs were coming down like raindrops, as you might say. Well, can you just imagine? You've got all this stuff falling on you, and you, well, I know I was shaking. We all clambered out, all of us, that's 5 of us, clambered out, wondered what had happened. We didn't really expect it, that we were going to get a bomb or anything exploding near to us. And I have to say that I think we would have been killed had it not been that my father had shutters put to the windows of the house, because it did stop the glass damaging us, really. We clambered out, went into the back garden. We were all alive, which was marvellous, really, which made really a miracle. And we made our way towards the shelter. Of course, it was full of water, but that's where we had to be. Just sit in the shelter with the water. And for the next, well, all of that night then, we were there, and we watched and heard all these drones of planes coming over and dropping these incendiary bombs around, so that the house where the sheet was over the, if it was a sheet, over the tree, those people were killed. Did you want me to tell you the number of people killed? Is that it?
Tell me as much as you like. Yeah.
Well, this was the first house where nearer to the landmine. And the mother and father had gone out. They'd gone to Berkswell, and in the house were 2 young people. One of them was 16, Almina, and her brother was 21. He was called Raymond, and the name was Holland. In the next house to them, there was an elderly couple called Sims, and they took their refuge under the stairs, because it was just a 3-bedroom house, that type of thing, semi-detached. Unfortunately, he'd gone into the kitchen. I think we were told to get her a drink, and he was killed. She was safe under the stairs. The next house was the one adjoining us, and their name's Williams, and the old lady wasn't very well, so she was in bed. I'm never sure quite where the young people were, but they weren't killed, but they were injured. But the old lady, I'm afraid, she was killed, and her body wasn't found until the February. She'd been blown out of the bed and was under the bed, and of course the house, front of the house was all destroyed, and then there was us. Well, our house was just a wreck. It was. There was no. You couldn't live in it. The whole of the front of the house had gone. Next door, in the next pair next to us, the man who lived there, their name was Borsa, and he'd gone to look to see if he could do anything with the bomb, and he was killed. So there were about 6 men, fathers in the area, lost their lives on that night because the bomb went off. But we're never sure whether they touched it, tried to move it, or it was delayed. But we never found out since.
So was this all when you were in the shelter?
This was before we got to the shelter. So we stayed in the shelter then, and of course we could just see all these cinders raining down around us. And the very first house where the young people were, that just set alight with the incendiary bombs, but we couldn't do anything about it because, of course, we hadn't got any water, only under our feet. And it just burned. We couldn't. That was it. I can't really remember now what happened to these other people. Although I do know that the young couple went down to the first aid station, which was in Banks Road, which was where the ambulances were, and that was when one of my relations who was there realised that we could be in trouble and came along to see and help us. So when the sirens went to of all clear at 7 o'clock, that was when we were found to have lost our house, and we just stood there without a home. We just what clothes we'd got on, what we were going to do. I've always tried to put my feet in the shoes of my mother, perhaps particularly, and think they have all these years striven to buy the house, bringing up a family, and all of a sudden you haven't got a home. What are you going to do now? You didn't expect any of this.
And what about in the night when the bombs were falling? What were you feeling then?
Terrible. Yeah, you wondered if they wouldn't be going to be falling on you again. You could easily have come and hit our shelter, which was in the garden, because they were falling, as it were, all over Coventry indiscriminately. We didn't have another one near to us as it happened. It was just one of these landmines. I think I've been told that they used them as mines previously. It wasn't a usual thing for it to be a mine on a parachute. Most of them came down and direct hits, big hole, people killed, which is what happened in the centre. I don't think there was any landmines in the centre. It was just bombs coming down anywhere, which is why the cathedral was destroyed. And of course they couldn't save it because they hadn't got any water. Yes, you've been in the cathedral, I expect.
Absolutely,
Have
many
you seen
times.
The new one and how it's been built to be with the old one? Sir Basil Spence did that. Have you seen the tapestries?
Absolutely, yeah.
Beautiful, yeah, yes. I have at one point, because my brother-in-law plays the organ, not in the cathedral, but he used to sing in the choir, so I've actually sat in the stalls, the choir stalls at Coventry Cathedral as well. Yes.
Wow.
And all the pennies, all as you go in, they're nearly worn now, I suppose, haven't they?
So that morning then, you're standing in front of your destroyed house.
Yes, which is in ruins.
And what are the people of Coventry going through? How did it affect you, your family, and the people around you?
Well, we were devastated. We all got to start to think of a new life, where we were going to live. As it happened, my mother had got a sister who was married, got a house at Carsley. And so we then, for the next 2.5 years, went to live there. But I think the trauma and the anxiety of losing a home, and then you've got 3 girls. My father had always got a job, he worked at the Daimler. It really took a toll on her. 2.5 years afterwards, she died. She was only 45.
How are you feeling? How are your family all coping with this?
Well, we were devastated.
What were your feelings towards the Germans then, at this point?
Well, I'd never had anything against Germans at all. I mean, I didn't know any of them as far as I was. Another lot of people, they were fine, but I suppose the men in the bombers were doing the job the same as what any of us Air Force people were doing, weren't they? Don't believe I hated them. I don't like the word hate anyway.
Good.
I don't like that word. They were doing the job. I think they came off worst, really. It's no good trying to solve a problem by doing the same as what people are doing to you, is it?
Absolutely.
You don't solve a problem like that.
So, what was your view towards the British government then?
Well, I think they were doing their best, and I think when Chamberlain went over there to talk to Hitler, he really was doing his level best, and when he came back with a piece of paper, they waved it to us and said, this is it. I think we all believed he'd done a good job. So I think they were doing their very best. But it wasn't to be, was it? Because Hitler was more concerned about grabbing other people's property.
So you're in Coventry. Coventry's destroyed, as it was known. How did Coventry recover from what happened?
Well, it got built up eventually. We certainly weren't going to be defeated. So everybody pulled their weight, did whatever they could. And the rubble got moved and buildings got not totally built up because most of them had to be prefabricated buildings for starters. We just carried on, everybody just carried on working and doing what they could to keep going because we were not going to be beaten.
We hear that Coventry forgave the Germans. We hear that
yes, we did.
Coventry became a city of peace and reconciliation.
Yes.
So
yes,
how did it all happen?
We had the Pope come, didn't we, at the time to the cathedral. I didn't go to that ceremony, but I believe he did at the time. He was the Polish Pope, and he came. So yes, I think we've tried to forgive as far as we can what happened. You have to, I think, in life, don't you? You can't go hating people all the time.
How did the events of that night shape the rest of your life?
Oh, well, very much so. Because all of a sudden, my life had changed. It was not quite the same sort of when you're living with somebody else in someone else's house. You haven't quite got the same freedom. And when you're 17, you are allowed to do more things than when you're under parents' thinking. So yes, it made quite a bit of difference to the way we could lead our life and the way you would lead your life, because there wasn't some of the things you could do, that the freedom really that we would have had. But I joined the civil defence after that and became a fire guard, so I had that in my life, which gave me another way of thinking and helping, and I did that until the end of the war.
And you do volunteer work as well, is that right?
Yes, I've done a lot of volunteering work in my time, really, because I used to help a lot of people who were less fortunate than myself. I've always driven a car, so I've always been able to give people lifts here and there if they've needed it, do shopping and take them to the hospital and that sort of thing.
Do you still drive now?
I do still drive now, yes. I only drive, I did the maximum this year, 600 miles.
So what else have you done then with your life?
Well, mostly, I had a shop.
Oh.
Yeah, I had a shop in Rugby. I had it for 19 years. And I sold wool and that sort of thing. And I used to do fashion shows.
Oh.
Yes, for the various women's organisations. I had a team of girls who used to do it with me, which was great fun. It was. Showing off all the garments you could knit with wool or crochet. Yes. So that took up quite a few years, time of my shopkeeping years. I retired 26 years ago. So in that time I've done other things, and recently I've been a volunteer down at St Cross Hospital. I've done that for 18 years. I go down there every Wednesday morning and do what I can to help. As far as it goes, make coffee and tea, and then make sure that the patients, if they want a drink, we can chat to them and make them feel at ease in the place. We've got a lovely hospital in Rugby, we really have. It's great. So I enjoy doing that.
That's lovely.
Yes. And I've been doing it, as I say, 18 years now.
Wow.
I want to continue doing it. They want me to be there till I'm 100.
So, I suppose Coventry is almost today defined by the Blitz. Why do you think it's important to remember the Blitz today?
Well, I think it's got to be put over to the next generation why it happened, so that it never happens again. Because let's face it, they thought that the First World War would be that would never be a war, but 20 years later there was another one. We've got a long time now. We hope. I'm hoping it will never happen again. I do think that the children, the next generations, have got to know why it happened, and hopefully, they will be able to solve a problem where perhaps we didn't solve it.
So, in one night, Coventry was destroyed, as it was known, and that was one night that's never really been repeated again in the UK. But it's no secret that this type of thing does go on in the world.
It is going on in the world. It's still going on in the world. Yes.
So,
I don't know how we're going to solve it.
From your experiences of Coventry through the Blitz and after the Blitz, what do you think can really be learnt from how Coventry kind of rose above and rose from the flames?
There's got to be a lot more understanding of people's lives, and how we've got to understand that there's two sides to a coin, isn't there? There's a top and a bottom. A penny's got a head and a tail. We've got to understand that, haven't we? That people are allowed to have the difference of opinion to us.
So for many people like me, this is a part of the history of Coventry, but for you this was very much your memories and your experience. So how are you finding all of the 75-year commemorations this year?
Well, I'm glad we can think about it, and we can put our thoughts to everybody around how we felt about it, because unless we talk about it to other people, they haven't got a clue, have they? No. Because I've been in the fire guard, in the civil defence, I belong to the association, and I had the opportunity to remember the Blitz by going to St Paul's Cathedral and remembering the people who I've been with in the fire guard, which was this group of men on the photograph that I've got here, and being able to represent them as well, and be introduced to Prince Edward. I think that was quite an experience to be able to talk to him about the Coventry Blitz, which he was very interested in, and I was selected to do that. There was only a few of us actually spoke to him at the Guildhall on that particular day. So, something I enjoyed doing. I'm pleased to be able to do it, because there's not many.
Very proud.
Well, yes, because doesn't seem to be anybody else in my age who's still around. Have you come across anybody else in Coventry?
You're the first survivor of the Blitz that I've ever met,
Oh,
to my knowledge.
Really? Yes. Well, I belong to the civil defence. I think that's probably why my name came up when I was first asked if I would do it. There must be others who were in Coventry, but probably didn't belong to the civil defence. Coventry will never die anyway. It won't. It's a very old city, but everything's going to be different when you have bombs dropped on it, isn't it? So, it's a big city now to what it was when I was a girl, very much so. We've got a lot of people who come to live in Coventry who now are Coventrians, but they've come from all over the world, haven't they, to live there? That's all right. Yeah.
Are you proud to be from Coventry?
Oh, of course, yes, yes. I tell everybody I'm a Coventry. If they are, if I have the opportunity, especially if somebody says, well, because we're being at the hospital, we do get a lot of people come to rugby who come from Coventry because they like coming to our little hospital. Well, not so little now. And when they say they come from Coventry, I say, well, where do you live in Coventry? Because I'm a Coventry. And then sometimes I've always feel I'm a relation. Yes, I have got loads of relations around Coventry, of course. You're a Coventrian. You went to one of the big schools of Coventry. So
I mean,
what do you were you born here?
I was born in Walsgrave Hospital in 1990.
Right, yes.
I lived in Coventry in Binley until I was 7 years old. Moved over to the other side of Coventry in Tile Hill, and I've lived there ever since.
Tile Hill, do you?
I do, yeah. I've loved Coventry. I love the history of Coventry, and and it's been really wonderful to speak to you today.
Yes, and of course you went to one of the major schools of Coventry, Bablick.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, I just want to say thank you really for having me today and for sharing your story with me. And I suppose as a Coventry lad myself, thank you for being a part of bringing Coventry back to life.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. I hope I've been able to give you a little bit of an idea of what Coventry was like when I was your age.
Absolutely.
Yes, a long time ago. Long time ago.